Hello and welcome to Part 9 of the Academy to Functions ATF-Facilitator Certification Workshop. In this part, we'll be examining suspension and tube training. Suspension training can be done using the suggested equipment from the ATF pack, or you can complement that with just a simple packing strap, which is a much more inexpensive alternative. Suspension trainers are excellent and allow for uses of various amounts of body weight resistance depending upon the length of the strap, which effectively changes the incline of the body. The more vertical you are, the less resistance. The primary benefit to this is that it's unstable in nature, so it increases the perturbance, which increases the difficulty, which means you have to maintain stability within the core and extremities in order to execute the movement. The other primary benefit of utilizing the suspension trainers, and the tubes for that matter, are the ability to execute pulls. In our everyday activities of daily living, we do not get nearly enough pulls, and therefore we are very anterior animals, very forward flexing, where we have a rounded shoulder, exaggerated curve in the low back. So pulls are an absolute necessity of functional training. The advantage of the tubes is that we can also include presses with our movements. With both of these instruments or both of these tools, resistance is easily changed just by changing the tension on the band or tube, or changing the length of that tube. You shorten the tube, you make it more challenging. You lengthen the strap, and you would thereby decreasing your incline. You make it more challenging on the suspension trainers. Goals of suspension and tube training. While we included increasing mobility on here, it is the least it's the smallest goal overall when you're talking about functional training. What the suspension trainers will allow you to do, especially in a number of the presses, it will really allow you to go deeper into your presses, thereby increase mobility, but specifically increasing the strength within that range of motion or that mobility. The real benefit of suspension and tube training is the stabilization and the strengthening aspect. While executing these movements, because you're not hooked up to a machine, you have to stabilize a joint and stabilize the core while executing the movement. So stability and strength are your primary goals. However, as we progress, we will move into dynamic movement, and you can execute many exercises in suspension and tube training that utilizes multiple joints and multiple planes. When using suspension and tube training, like our other functional training exercises, we always want to maintain posture and alignment. It's absolutely fundamental. We want to maintain a stiff wrist or ankle, and this ensures that we pull and press through the elbow and shoulder or the knees and hips. We want to scrape, stay long and tall, and maintain a nice, neutral, linear movement. We always want to emphasize full range of motion and squeeze at the end of that motion. And again, we're always working within our current mobility, and we're not going to sacrifice any movement and compensate for any lack of mobility by changing the desired movement. Common errors and corrections. Again, pain. What we ask is that you limit your motion, or you need to return back to the body weight training, or just discontinue. Make sure you consult your physician if you have increased pain. A common compensation is hunching of the upper back, bowing of the low back, or forward flexing of the head. Again, we stay strong by staying tall or long through the crown of the head and maintaining that draw and maneuver and a strong lumbopelvic hip complex. Rounding of the shoulders is very common, so we want to open and broaden that chest, squeeze the shoulder blades together, turn the pits of the elbows into one another. If the breaking of the wrist or ankle, so we want to make sure that the wrist and the ankle stay stiff, and again that we're pulling through the elbows and shoulder and pulling through the knees and hips. You become sloppy or uncoordinated. Slow the movement down. Progress using the available mobility. Change your incline, change your resistance, and again, if the suspension training and tube training is too difficult, go back to the body weight training and use your developmental sequence. If you get the flaring of the knees or elbows, really focus on scraping or staying in line with your torso. Pull in tight. Okay, pull through that proximal joint and avoid flaring. In summary, suspension and tube training are very important as they allow the execution of pulls. Again, pulls are most often neglected in our daily routine, thus the forward head and rounded shoulders. They also allow for increasing amounts of resistance by changing incline and changing the perturbance or the stability. It allows us to focus on posture and controlling movements. We really want to avoid those compensatory movements like forward flexing the head and bowing of the low back. We want to stay long, stay tall, and keep that neutral spine and good posture. And then again, if suspension training becomes too difficult, simply return back to bodyweight training. Included with the manual here is a demonstration video. You may follow this link. And that concludes Part 9 of the Academy to Functions ATF Facilitator Certification Workshop.